Hello everybody. Today we're going to talk about creating a custom component in Embeddable. We've covered this in the docs, of course, but this will allow us to simultaneously build something a bit more complex and cover things in a simple step-by-step fashion. To that end, we're going to build a component using chart.js that doesn't exist in the vanilla components. Specifically, we're going to build a polar area chart. It's similar to a pie chart, but it helps give additional context by scaling the wedges. We're going to use Embeddable sample data for this, and we're going to organize the chart by a dimension, then break it into slices by a measure. One last thing to mention. Just because we use chart.js at Embeddable doesn't mean you have to. We have clients using AM charts, high charts, and a variety of other options. If you can build it in React, you can build it in Embeddable. We'll need two files to do this, which are key to the way that Embeddable works. The first is the emb.ts file, which controls what our chart inputs look like in the builder, how we load data, and how we pass it to the chart. The second is our index.tsx file, which is a pure React component. This is where we'll put all the actual chart code. Everything from the emb.ts file will be passed to index.ts as props, just the way you're used to with ordinary React. Let's get started. If you haven't already, you'll want to download our boilerplate repo, which gives you everything you need to get set up with Embeddable. I've got a clean download of that all set up, including removing the example components and enabling the vanilla components library. Our getting started documentation covers exactly how to do all that. I've also created a folder in /source/embeddable.com/components called polar area chart. Right here. A couple of prerequisites you'll need before we dive in. You'll need to switch to a terminal, open it in VS Code however you like, and run npm i. And then we're going to need some chart.js modules. So once npm i is finished, there we go. We'll run a quick npm i chart.js adapter date functions, which we don't actually end up using, but it's good to have, and React chart.js 2. Back to VS Code. With all that out of the way, you should be ready to go. If you're watching the video, you can see that my tsconfig.json file is angry right now, but that error will go away as soon as we have any files in the folder. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and create them. I like to start by creating a very basic index.tsx, which should look like this. I'm going to copy and paste code for the sake of video speed. And it helps if you name the file correctly. There we go. As you can see, that's an extremely basic React component. It'll grow as we build things out, but for now we just need something to reference in our emb.ts file. So let's save that and let's create polar area chart.emb.ts. Now we can get started filling it out with the following code. There's not much here yet either, and that's okay. It'll make things easier to understand. The first thing to notice is that we're importing our component from index.tsx. We pass that into the define component function down here, which allows Embeddable to work its magic. After that, we define some meta information. Most of this is straightforward and just allows us to name and categorize the chart. That empty inputs array is important though, and we'll be adding things to it shortly. After that, we run define component, which at the moment isn't doing much. It's just passing each of our inputs to the components as props, except we don't have any inputs yet, so it's passing an empty props object. That's not very useful, so let's add some inputs. First thing, we need a dataset input in order to wire your chart up to one of our datasets. So within the inputs array, let's go ahead and add this code. We're also going to need a dimension with which to slice up our pie. So right below that, we add that. And we need a measure for the size of the slices. So again, below that, we add that. This is technically all we need. We could add a lot more, and you've probably noticed that most of the vanilla components have a lot more inputs in the builder. Let's keep it simple for now, but we're going to add two more inputs just to match the other components, a title and a description. Here they are. Before we switch to working with these inputs in index.ts, we need to modify define component to actually pull data from our data source. We do this with Embeddable's built-in load data function. change the return statement from the short thing to... Now our props will not only include all of the inputs, but also a results array that contains the data loaded from the data source based on our dimension and measure values. In fact, before we make the chart work, let's just verify that we're getting values in our props. Save this file, switch back to index.tsx. We're going to make a few modifications to this file. In fact, we're going to replace everything that's there with this. You can ignore that empty props type for right now. We'll be filling it out later. This gives us enough to start checking things in the browser. So save the file, and let's fire up Embeddable Dev. This should automatically open a browser window and show you your Embeddable Dev workspace. And there we go. Create a new dashboard, and you should see the polar area chart in your list of charts. Add it to the dashboard, and let's fill out the inputs. You'll need to create a data set. I'm going to go with the orders data set from our sample data. And I'm going to set my slice to the joined country of origin and my metric to the number of orders measure. And we'll add a quick title and description. Click Save, and you'll see a very boring box of text that just says this will be a polar area chart. That's expected for now. Let's check out our developer console. You should see that the props have been logged. Your data will probably be different unless you're still on Embeddable's sample connection, but it should look something like this. Let's move me out of the way. Great. So we've got everything we need to make the polar area chart do something. Let's get that working. We can switch back to our code editor, and in index.tsx, add the following imports. It's a whole bunch of stuff we're not using yet, but it's everything we'll need to make things work. Next, let's register a few defaults with chart.js like this. And just below that, let's fill out our prop types. Right, with the housekeeping out of the way, let's jump down to our actual function. Right now it looks like this, not very interesting, but we're going to expand it a bit. First, remove the console log entirely, and then just below the function declaration, let's add this code. While we're at it, let's add our props declaration. There we go. Now that we have some empty chart data in state, we'll use useEffect to populate it. This code snippet's a little long, so I've commented it to explain what's going on, and we'll also step through it. What we're doing here is straightforward. First, we check and see if we have data. If and when we do, we get our list of labels and values from the dimension and measure values. So that's what's happening here. Then we pass that data to chart.js along with some color values, a border width, and a label. Chart.js has a lot of other options, and you can configure them all either by hard coding them or by tying them into additional inputs and thus prop values that you create in the emb.ts file. You can get as complex as you want within the bounds of whatever library you're working with. For today, we're going to keep it simple. Okay, last but not least, we need to make the actual polar area chart work. Where we currently have a one-line return statement, instead, let's use this code. As you can see, we show the title and description if they exist. We also check the results provided by load data for an isLoading Boolean, and if it's true, we show some loading text. You could replace that with a spinner, which is what we do with our vanilla components. Once isLoading is no longer true, we show the polar area chart filled with the appropriate data, which we set up in the use effect up here. Let's go check our dev server. Save the file, and then fire the server back up if you quit out of it. I did not, so I can just switch to my browser. It will automatically refresh, and what do you know? We have a polar area chart. In my example, the US is dominating the order count and making the polar area chart look pretty goofy, so I'm going to add a quick filter just to remove US values so we can see a little bit more. There we go. With that done, we get a pretty cool looking polar area chart. From here, the sky's the limit. You can customize your charts as much as you want, add additional inputs, tie the chart into the Embeddable theming system, whatever you like. I hope this tutorial has helped you wrap your head around creating custom components in Embeddable. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to the customer success team. See you in the next one.